It's amazing. I mean, Angel Lemus Sensei dearly departed. He was someone that I was really hoping at some point to meet. I loved the content that he put out on YouTube. His magazine was excellent. He made a real contribution to the martial arts, and just the stuff that I saw him do, especially around doing things around the understanding of Tomarite and those sorts of things, I thought was really revolutionary, and I loved his take. He had a beautiful dojo too. Every time I saw it, was quite amazing. So I was very, although I never had the pleasure, I was very sad to know that, obviously for his family, but also for the wider martial arts community, I guess selfishly that we lost him. It was very sad. Um, One thing that I
You
want to
know,
pick up on. Sorry,
do you
please,
mind if I cut you off real quick?
please.
So leading up to his passing, he had bugged me for a couple of years to write about what we were doing. He thought because he was a big part of the reason what we were doing. I mean, without him, we wouldn't be there. And so he kept pushing me to write about it. And I said, fine, I'm going to write an article in your Bugeisha. And so it took me a year finally to get done the article. And then it got published and we talked to him. We were all very excited about the article. It's called the Iwa Dojo experiment in the last Bugeisha that came out last year. And I had a conversation with him around when it was published in April, and a month later he passed away. So the day after his birthday, which
Oh
we were
goodness.
all just shooken.
Mm, no, it
Great,
was a
he's a
great
great guy.
loss. Mm,
One of the best martial artists I ever met. Amazing.
mm. I think I had a brief interaction with him on via email,
Uh,
a few years ago, and he was very kind. But I loved his content, and a great loss. When you were talking, when you were reflecting on some of the Koryu martial arts in relation to karate, and you also brought up Hanshi Patrick McCarthy. You know, I remember that Hanshi McCarthy was the first person I ever saw doing things like Katori Shintoryu. You know, aside from all the other, you know, the Chinese martial arts and the karate and the training of Richard Kim and the Budokan and Okinawa in Japan, and he'd even spent some time here in New Zealand and had a pretty a good knowledge of Maori fighting traditions and with other indigenous fighting traditions. I remember the reason that kind of stuck out in my mind coming up and reading the books and seeing the videos and things like that was because I'd never seen anyone do those, create those elements and do them as complementary fields of study. And
mm,
you know, when you were talking before about Jodo and preservation, the preservation of bunkai and of kata and those sorts of things, I guess I hope this is not putting the cat amongst the pigeons, but I'd be interested in your perspective on when do we cross the line between preservation and stagnation?
yeah,
Um,
that's a good
I,
point.
mm,
I think with Okinawan karate, because a lot of the masters passed away during the World War II, that there was so much that was not there, and much of it was an oral tradition. Um, our dojos try to just preserve the empty hand katas as best we can, but we use the bunkai as a vehicle for progression and evolution. There's a countryman of yours by the name of Alexander Bennett. Do you know Alexander Bennett? I like
no, no, I don't.
You do not?
Nope.
Sensei, you need to know him.
Okay.
He's lived in Japan for 30 years. He's
So
a
what is his name again?
Alexander Bennett.
Alexander? No, I do not. But I will search. I will make all
Sensei,
efforts to connect.
he's a high-ranking kendo instructor and he actually teaches in the university. And one of the things that if you don't mind me quoting him,
I think I have. Does he? I've seen some stuff with Kendall. I think I have seen some stuff. He's been on NHK. They've had him do documentaries and things like that. Is that the gentleman that you're talking about? He
I
had
think so.
long hair. At one point, he had quite long hair. I
No,
do. I
I don't
think
think
I.
I don't think he had long hair. I know he did a presentation a couple years ago about Don Drager Sensei.
Yes, yes, I've seen that presentation. I didn't know the
So,
gentleman's name, but yes, 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 yes. No,
do you
I
mind
have
if I
a
read it?
picture.
Do you mind if I read his quote?
Please.
Uh, he said the Japanese Budo is hardwired, and I would say Okinawan Budo as well, into saying that tradition is the be all and end all, that it must stay as is, because it is the way it has always been. But actually, through his research, this totally goes against traditional Budo, because Budo has always been about evolution and change. So I think that it just depends on when that evolution happens. As we know, we've been training for a long time. Someone coming in as a white belt who's never trained before, I think they have to go through the process of shuhari. They can't, just expect to evolve right away. You have to and go through the that process first. Over time, it takes a long time. Um, but I think it is incumbent on us at all practitioners to move forward, but at the right time, and it has to make sense. It can't just be for them, what looks good on a YouTube video for demonstrations or to get that eye shocking wow moment. But, what is going to be long lasting, what is going to be effective to our students in a real combative situation. And, hopefully saves them, preserves their life or their family members or friends. Um, but I believe in the evolution. Do you have Hulu in New Zealand?
No,
Hulu.
we don't have Hulu. I'm aware of the streamer, but no, I don't have it. Unfortunately, we don't
So
have it.
there's a very popular TV show called The Bear on here in America. The Bear,
Oh, I'm
and it's
familiar with it. It was the one about the chef.
the
He's a
chef.
cook? Yes, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen bits and pieces on YouTube. Looks very good.
So recently, we just finished the second season, but there's one quote that I really liked in there. I mean, the bear, the character, the bear or the chef, he trained at different high level 5-star restaurants, and I view that as training at different senseis. And but one quote that came out was very interesting is that their art of cuisine and cooking cannot evolve without passion and creativity, but it's important to evolve. So and I kind of relate that to Budo as well. You know, so those two elements are critical, passion and creativity for the evolution. But again, the timing is very important.
I wonder whether or not I'm in complete agreement, and I think it's a wonderful metaphor too. I wonder sometimes if the in terms of creativity, I don't have a problem with creativity. I think it's essential, as you're pointing out, but I think you have to have done your time.
You're right.
I think I think sometimes people, like you were talking before about, changing for changing's sake. I think sometimes people are looking to skip to the last chapter without reading the entire book, and I think that for me, I think you kind of rob yourself of a valuable experience as a martial artist and as a human being when you try to skip chapters. There's this thing about looking for secret techniques or pressure points, and all those things are valid and they exist within the martial arts. But I think for me, in order to be able to appreciate them and perhaps make them work to an appreciable degree, it's important to have gone to classes. It's important to
Absolutely.
have gone on the nights when you didn't want to go, to have suffered through injuries and cold nights and having to wash your gi and wear your gi and do it when you didn't want to do it. And I think that there is a kind of sometimes the problem is people look to change for convenience as opposed to change to develop the art. And just quickly on that, Stephen K. Hayes of ninjutsu fame.
Mm.
Um, I don't know a great deal about ninjutsu, but I was watching a documentary in which he was a part of, and he was talking about that it is almost a betrayal of the tenets of the different Budo that they do if they don't develop it. And so I guess again, just speaking about in your own training, do you kind of see your attention to kata and your attention to bunkai and all these sorts of things as some people might view that as a backward step, as moving towards some kind of idealized time? How would you argue that point with someone who's done 20 minutes of karate and a YouTube class on kung fu, say for instance?
Yeah. So I used to train with a gentleman years ago when we trained at the Rebukan Dojo in Annapolis, a really intense um, dojo. That sensei there was named Rick Poland, and he trained directly under Shimizu Sensei, who was one of the last, I think, grandmasters there with Otofuji Sensei. They were kind of peers, but um, anyway, he kind of turned me on to Jodo. But what I learned there was that he mentioned quite a bit about um, people who train Jodo, if they really, really want to understand it and get deep in it, or any Koru arts, it's all about mat time. And you can tell, people who've been training for a long time, my Sakukai sensei is that you start gaining a Budo eye where if you can see when someone who just learned on YouTube and didn't really actually put mat time in, they maybe once every 1 month, one day a month they train and they think they got it figured out. But how many hours you put on the mat? And one other aspect, I think that the last time I had a conversation with that gentleman was that the kata, actually, when you start training the kata pretty regularly and devoted to training it and then start thinking deeply at it, the kata, especially with Jodo kata, starts teaching you without it, but it's years. And Jodo is a very good example. I don't know a lot about many other Koru arts, but Jodo was created back in the time of Musashi. The founder of Jodo actually had apparently a legendary battle with Musashi, and that's how the Jodo started. Jodo only had 5 katas back then, 5 secret katas. That was 400 years ago. Now they have close to over 100. So why is that? So it started off with a grand master of Jodo, who was the founder, and then over time he had disciples, and every generation there was an evolution, but there was time put in. There was devotion and time, and the mat time, and the training, and the sweat, and the anguish, and the blood, sweat, and tears before. And then you reach to the Menkyo Kaiden level, and then the Menkyo Kaiden is when that individual who gets that secret skull, the secret 5 kata, is authorized to, or maybe has the ability to go into the evolution state. So that Jodo is a very good example of how it started with very, very humble 4 or 5 katas, 2-person katas, and then over time, over generations, it's this huge curriculum that has not only the Jo, but it has Kenjutsu as part of their curriculum, Jute. It has Hojo Jitsu as far as the tying art, Kusarigama. That's all part of the whole curriculum. So, I mean, it's hard to tell individuals that who hasn't walked that really in a conversation. This is the way it is. It's only those individuals, like, if you really want to know, follow me, and then I'll direct you the way. And at some point, you might want to break off, and do your own thing. But you really got to put the time in. You got to put the mat time in. It can't be an overnight. It can't be driving through McDonald's and getting your Big Mac and walking out. You got to put the time
in. No, I 100% agree. And to understand what the time is, I mean, the time is full of disappointment, cracked bones, bloodied knuckles, injuries, um, being winded by techniques, getting kicked in the face, kicking other people in the face.
in.
All of those things It's not kind of this romantic kind of Karate Kid notion. I had a kid say to me, one of my students said to me, "Could you beat Daniel LaRusso?" And I went, "No, no," the other day. But for me, one of the things that I always ask people, I try to, and I've been interested in your response to this, is that who has influenced you in your martial arts journey that is not a martial artist?
Oh, definitely my wife.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I introduced her to you before
Yes, I
contact.
was very lucky. Very lucky. She's very lovely, very gracious.
Yeah, she definitely has taught me patience. Um, my senseis from the past, especially Sakakon Sensei, tried to teach me etiquette, but I was a hard head and stubborn. She's definitely taught me a better form of etiquette, and she still does. And she's very honest and gentle and direct, but gentle. And she's probably the biggest influence in my life. And my Buddha would not be the way it is without her, because I just don't have the discipline or the patience, and she's taught me patience. Now here comes the but there's a flip side to that. She wanted to train karate with me, and she said I think I want to join. I said okay. She goes, but I don't want to do basics. I said what? You don't want to do basics? And she said, I just want to do kata. I don't want to do applications because that hurts. I don't want to hit the makwar because that hurts. I just want to do kata. So I would say my wife was my best teacher in my life and in Budo, but also, honestly, she was not my best student.
Yeah, my partner, she's a sandan.
Oh,
So
really?
she's more often than not she's in class with me, and I will say something or do something or forget something that I've said or forget something I've done, and the eye roll will you could just literally watch my my self confidence and my belief in myself just kind of evaporate in front of your eyes if you watch for it. I think that people outside, for me, the thing that I enjoyed about martial arts and that I think has made me allowed me to continue to do it is because of the positive associations that I had with it young. It was the first thing I felt like I really sort of spoke to me in some way, shape, or form, and something that I wanted to continue to do because of how I felt about it, about myself when I did it. What continues to get you putting your gear on every day?
I think that definitely having people that depend on me to teach them, you know, I don't think if I opened up my dojo 22 years ago that I would have continued training by myself on my own because I have people that were, and that was really one of the reasons too, is um, that I did that was to pass it on to my children. And I had an opportunity, thank God, to teach my children. I taught my wife for a very short time, then she fired me. Um, and but and then over the years, I've taught many children and many other people. I have a small dojo, so it's a word of mouth friend. It's referrals only because my dojo is at my home, so I have to be very careful who I admit. I usually, if a stranger reaches out to me, I have to have an interview with them outside the dojo for a cup of coffee or tea, get to know them first before I feel comfortable about bringing them to the dojo. Um, but teaching, having people depend upon me um, is the reason. And then over the years, I've learned that I depend on them, that through teaching them, I learn and have a better understanding of my Budo. Um, at the beginning, I was very, very anxious about questions or being challenged in the dojo because I didn't want to appear like I didn't know. And then over the years, I kind of matured, and I'll tell people when they ask me a question, I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out together.
Mm.